Hello, this is Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. If you could please hit that like button for me, I'd really appreciate it. I know that you could probably, if you don't like it later, hit the dislike button, but if you could hit it right now for me, I think it would make a big difference, because it seems like by the time it's over, people forget, and there's no way that you didn't like the video. I mean, my videos are absolutely, I think, the best videos on the Idaho 4 case that there are. Mine are fact-based, accurately portrayed, and very, very useful for somebody that has a logical mind in this case. There's a lot of conspiratorial videos out there that are presenting absolutely nonsensical information, but those are more popular. So if you guys can like my video, maybe we can start making popular the more accurate videos that are out there. Now, today's video is going to be about, was Bryan Kohberger paranoid regarding his own DNA? And I think there is ample evidence to suggest that, but I also think it also tells us a little bit more about the case and, you know, what things may have triggered him being more paranoid. And I'd like to discuss that. Also, I have some other questions that it would be great if you could comment on in the comment section. So as we know, on November 13th, 2022, between 4:08 and 4:20, if you've been watching my videos, it's absolutely inside of that range, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle were all murdered at 1122 King Road. And I believe it was Bryan Kohberger. He's been indicted by a grand jury. He's been arrested for the murders, and he has no bail. Also, his DNA was found inside the residence on a knife sheath as his vehicle was driving around the neighborhood from 3:26 until 4:20, when it left the scene at a high rate of speed. So from 3:26 to 4:20, a white Elantra missing its front license plates around there, and his DNA is found on the knife sheath inside that home, and he's been arrested for the murders. So let's take a look at a 3D model of the house really quick. So that's the front of the house, but let's go to the back side. This is the sliding glass door. Now we're going to see a 360-degree video that I have. If you take a look at it, that's the same angle right there. So this is Madison Mogen's bedroom right here. And take note of the wood in front of the window, or on the window right there. This window here is the window at the top of the stairs. And so let's just play it a little bit further, or walk down a little bit further here. And if you look right down there, there's a patio, and then there's a sliding glass door right around the corner there. And that's what this is right here, the sliding glass door. And so we'll just go like that. That's how we're looking at it. And that's Madison Mogen's bedroom right there. So from inside the home right here, the sliding glass door is just over to the left, and here is the kitchen. So after Kohberger came through the kitchen like this, he would have taken a right from his perspective and gone up the stairs. And when he got to the top of the stairs, did he check Kaylee Gonzalez's room? Was she the target? I don't know. My feeling now is that Madison Mogen was the target. I think that's what window he was looking through where he was parked. And here is Madison Mogen's bedroom, and there's that window that had the wood covering it from the outside. And if we go back to the 360 degree, that's that room right there. And in this room, he kills Madison Mogen and Kaylee Gonzalez. Now right here, I believe this is how it was set up in there. I think Madison was face down, and then there was a knife sheath underneath a quilt with the snap side down on Madison Mogen's right side. That's how I picture how it's described in the documents. Now on that knife sheath, they found DNA. And it turns out it was Bryan Kohberger's DNA. In the objection to state's motion to protective order, it says, on November 13th, 2022, law enforcement responding to a 911 call found Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin deceased. Law enforcement later found a K-bar knife sheath placed next to Miss Mogen on her bed. The sheath was placed buttoned down and partially under Miss Mogen and the comforter. It's interesting the use of the word placed there, as if it was intentionally placed. On November 20th, 2022, the Idaho State Police Lab in Meridian, Idaho, located DNA on the button of the sheath and performed STR analysis that led nowhere when ran through CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, other than to show the provider was a male. So they were able to see that it was a male, but that was about it. And I was going to say, the reason that I have a little bit more knowledge about DNA is my channel has donated, I think, over $70,000 to Identifiers International for use in identifying Jane and John Does, and Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick is the founder of Identifiers International, and she will be on my show later this evening, and we will likely discuss the Idaho 4 murder case and the DNA situation there. So if you have any confusion at all, you should come check that out. She's been on my show, gosh, probably a dozen times, and most of the people that watch my shows, the freaks, we are all very aware of how DNA works and how it's collected and the process of FGG. So the thing is CODIS is a system where criminals that have been incarcerated, once you've been convicted, your DNA is then uploaded to CODIS. And sometimes when you get a warrant for a DNA sample, like in Bryan Kohberger's case, you upload it to CODIS as well. But generally you have criminals in CODIS and then also unknown perpetrators, like a semen sample from rapists, and also you have perhaps maybe a blood sample from a crime scene that doesn't match one of the victims. You might put that into CODIS, but when they uploaded Bryan Kohberger's DNA, the 20 markers, there, I think now CODIS has 20 markers, I believe, and they take the same 20 portions of the DNA sequences from each individual, depending on, if they match all 20, then you got the right guy. They couldn't find a match to Bryan Kohberger. And that's all it was. There's people out there that make it sound like, oh, they didn't find a match, so they finagled the DNA and they came up with a... That's not what it is. CODIS is a totally different thing than forensic genetic genealogy. Forensic genetic genealogy, they actually upload a full DNA sequence into like GEDmatch or family tree DNA, and you get matches back, and then you try to build trees out, and you end up finding a lead by giving a name to law enforcement of a name of an individual, and then law enforcement must prove that the lead is the individual by doing background checks, was he in the area, etc., and then eventually collecting a DNA sample surreptitiously to compare to the sample DNA. Now, Bryan Kohberger knew that law enforcement would be able to collect his DNA if placed in a garbage can, as when they are placed out on the street, they are public property. So he threw it away in another garbage can, as we'll find out here later. And one of the things I want you guys to comment in the comment section about is, do you think that the knife sheath was accidentally left or intentionally left? And what effect that might have had on his paranoia. So if he left it there intentionally, and he thought he cleaned it really well, but he just missed that one spot of DNA on the button, because as we know, they found one single source of DNA on the knife sheath. He didn't know that. And we also don't know what that really means. Are there mixtures that were found on the knife sheath? Now, if it's a 50-50 mixture, it's almost impossible to separate them currently with the technology that's out there. But if you have a much larger contributor to the DNA in a mixture, they are able to separate out the majority contributor. So if he intentionally left it there, he probably wasn't quite as nervous about his DNA being found, because it sounds like he was very meticulous about leaving anything behind. He liked wearing those gloves. Now, if he left it there accidentally, then I think he would be pretty paranoid. But if you look at it like this, when he was driving back to Pennsylvania on December 15th, 2022 at 10:41 and 10:50 while in Indiana on his way back. He was pulled over twice. Now, if you combine that with accidentally leaving a knife sheath, I think the paranoia quotient would go up absolutely dramatically, don't you? I mean, I think he would be absolutely freaking out at that point. And if you left it there intentionally, he now might be becoming very paranoid, or more paranoid, but not quite as much as he would be if he accidentally left it there, knowing that he's exposed himself. Let's take a look at an article in Law and Crime. Authorities in Pennsylvania say that when police arrested Idaho University murder suspect Bryan Kohberger in his parents' home 2 months ago, he was wearing latex gloves and separating his personal trash from the family's kitchen garbage, placing his own refuse into several sealable plastic baggies. I mean, if that doesn't just ooze him feeling guilty and trying to hide his own DNA, why would he do that? Can anybody think of any rational reason anybody would do that? I could see wearing your gloves and putting something in the garbage can, but why would you care if your trash was mixed with your family member unless you were trying to make sure that your DNA never even entered that garbage can because you were nervous now that somebody was going to be collecting it, and you know that when you throw away garbage, it's now open for anybody to take. You don't need a warrant for that, for collecting trash. Then the article continues and says, Mr. Kohberger was found awake in the kitchen area. So check that out. When they bust into the home, he's in the kitchen area, dressed in shorts and a shirt, and wearing latex medical type gloves, and apparently was taking his personal trash and putting it into separate Ziploc baggies. So imagine him sitting at that table, spreading the garbage out and finding the things that he used, and maybe everybody else was sleeping. So he's doing it alone, and he's taking his own trash and throwing it into other garbage cans so that law enforcement doesn't find his trash. Wow, that's crazy. And it was Michael Mancuso who discussed the situation. He is the Monroe County First Assistant District Attorney. Then the Law and Crime article continued on by saying, documents say state police collected a knife, a Glock 22, Gen 5 40 caliber gun, 3 Glock 40 caliber magazines, a Smith & Wesson pocket knife, a laptop, 2 black face masks, black gloves, and a green leafy substance that was found in both a green container as well as in a plastic bag. So maybe that was marijuana. Who knows? Additionally, authorities say they searched Kohberger's 2015 Hyundai Elantra and recovered swabs, gloves, boots, a shovel, and a pair of goggles. Wow. I mean, so the thing is 2 black face masks. I mean, how many of you have those? Okay. Well, I do, Gray. I go hunting, and what we do is... Okay, all right, okay. And then there's black gloves. A lot of people have black gloves. And also swabs were listed, but all that means is they use swabs to swab around to try to collect DNA samples. It doesn't mean they found literal swabs sitting around in the car. And gloves, boots, a shovel, and a pair of goggles. Now, what I'm getting from this screenshot right here is the shovel, goggles, and black face masks. All right? How many of us really just drive around with a shovel in our cars? I mean, sure, if you have a pickup truck or, an SUV or something like that, and you're somebody that does that kind of work, but in like an Elantra, Honda Accord, Volkswagen Rabbit, whatever the hell you want to choose, do you normally have shovels sitting around in there? That just sounds strange. And goggles. What do you have goggles for? What are you going to use those? I mean, you could definitely see using those at a crime scene, right? Especially if you have a knife and you put the goggles on. Maybe you took those goggles off before walking by Dylan Mortensen when he was leaving the house so he could see better. Perhaps there was blood all over those goggles and then he cleaned them off. Who knows, man? We don't know what they found on the swabs or anything. We just know what the defense said, and that doesn't mean anything. We know that the defense team oftentimes just puts out anything that makes the public think, oh, their guy looks good. Okay? We don't know what they found. I have a feeling that there are DNA samples that they collected, and I think they've been done investigating the case for months now. They've got Bryan Kohberger dead to rights. That's my opinion. And the face mask. Really? What do you have 2 black face masks for? Can you give me a good reason you'd need one of those? Oh, I guess those times he was just stalking the residents. You know, like on that night, he was just sitting in his car stalking. Yes, that was his white Elantra. He drives around. He drives around at night in his white Elantra, everybody. And he was just sitting right here, looking through the window there, stalking like he normally does. Probably had the black face mask on. He was looking through the window. And, he just drives around a lot at night, like he says, and he's sitting there. And then he looked up there, and somebody was killing the same people that he was stalking. And then he sat there and he waited for 12 minutes while this was happening, watching. And then he took off. But instead of calling 911 or helping anybody, he realized that he would look really bad because he was stalking the same house. So then he drove back home by driving 30 miles out of the way because he had a lot of thinking to do. He was just thinking and thinking and thinking. It had nothing to do with trying to avoid being seen going home in a traditional route. It had nothing to do with that. It was just that, he was paranoid about being caught as a stalker. Let's move on now to the New York Post article. It's similar to the last one, but it's a little different. Accused Idaho multiple murderer Bryan Kohberger was meticulously sorting through his trash wearing latex gloves when he was busted at his parents' Pennsylvania home, a prosecutor has revealed. Monroe County First Assistant District Attorney Michael Mancuso told BRC 13 that Kohberger was found awake in the kitchen area, dressed in shorts and a shirt on December 30th when cops raided his family Albrightsville home around 1:30 a.m. Now that was 15 days after he was pulled over. So that whole time he was home, he was paranoid as hell. I wonder if he hadn't been pulled over, if he wouldn't have been paranoid. And it does make you also wonder, let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think the FBI is being truthful when they say they didn't pull him over intentionally? It feels like one of those was intentional, but when you put 2 together, it's like, Jesus, that's ridiculous. But maybe they did that on purpose, knowing that it would make him paranoid, and you could then watch him do things to try to help mitigate the paranoia that he has now related to his own DNA. I think that's actually probably what happened, right? And also, he's 1:30 in the morning. So the cops break into the house, and the rest of the family is likely asleep already. He's in the kitchen wearing shorts and a shirt and surgical gloves, and he's meticulously going through the trash, finding his own items, making sure he doesn't touch anything else, and then putting him in the plastic bags, and then putting him into the neighbor's garbage cans. I mean, how crazy is that, everybody? The 28-year-old suspect was also wearing latex medical gloves and apparently was taking his personal trash and putting it into separate Ziploc baggies. Now, was he spreading out the whole family's trash and finding his own? I mean, this is pretty crazy. I mean, you got to admit that isn't something that an innocent person's doing. He's trying to hide his DNA from being collected, which means he really has a poor understanding of DNA. He should have realized that if they have his DNA sequence, that a family member would easily show up on there, thus implicating him again and allowing law enforcement to get a warrant to collect a DNA swab from his cheek and then compare that to the knife sheath, and that's exactly what happened. The DNA knife sheath sequence was compared to Bryan Kohberger's swab that they took on his cheek, and it matched 100%. You'd have to find something like, I remember I came up with the number like 5 quintillion planet Earths with the same DNA structure that you might find another person. Conspiracy theorists will say, so you're saying there's a chance, much like Dumb and Dumber. The items were previously listed in search warrants without detail on what troubled criminology student was doing. Hiding his trash, Mancuso suggested, could explain why the trash pull that was done days before the raid had only detected DNA profiles of his family members, but not from him. And isn't that absolutely right? So what Kohberger was doing worked. His DNA wasn't found in the trash, but he was so dumb he didn't realize that collecting family members' DNA would also point to him. So they found the DNA sample of the father. That was enough to get the swab that they then compared to the sample taken from the knife sheath from Bryan Kohberger. So they got the Bryan Kohberger swab, compared that to the knife sheath because his father's DNA was found in the trash at that home. And again, his DNA was a perfect match. So like I said, him removing his own trash worked for removing his DNA from the trash, but it didn't work in protecting him from being arrested. Then the New York Post article continues, it will likely be used by prosecutors in Idaho, where Kohberger was quickly extradited to be charged with the November 13th slaying of 4 University of Idaho students. It could very well explain some of the other aspects of the case from Idaho, some of the lengths that a person would go to avoid having their DNA left behind when they know or should have known that there was an investigation underway, Mancuso suggested. The most important part was a cheek swab, the prosecutor noted, calling it something that they could compare to the DNA of the snap button for the sheath of the knife left at the murder scene. Then the New York Post continued, the inventory also suggested other potential distinctive clues, particularly the fact that Kohberger's black and white Nike sneakers were listed as being a size 13. I would be keen on the shoes, the size of the shoes, comparison to any shoe impressions that might have been recovered at the scene. That sort of thing, Mancuso told the outlet. But certainly for the investigation and the interest of the investigators in building the case layer by layer, that was a significant find, he said of the items taken from Kohberger's possession. So it's kind of interesting. It almost seems like he might have inside knowledge that the size 13 shoe matched perhaps that footprint outside of Dylan Mortenson's bedroom. And maybe they perhaps even found some outside. You know, if he walked up that bank, perhaps it was muddy enough, but it was pretty cold, so I doubt it would be. The ground was probably pretty hard, so he might not have been able to leave a footprint there. I think that Bryan Kohberger was likely extremely paranoid if he left that knife sheath there intentionally, and even not. The time when he was pulled over twice by the police, that would have made anybody paranoid, because he's the killer, and he knows they're onto him now. And the only way that he knows that they were onto him was because he must have left DNA at the crime scene, and likely on that knife sheath that he left there. And even if he left it there intentionally, he might have realized he missed something. But if he left it there accidentally, I think he would have been incredibly paranoid when those 2 officers pulled him over in a 9-minute period. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comments section about the paranoia aspect. And do you think that the knife sheath was left there intentionally or accidentally? And don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section about that. And again, if I could ask you to please hit that like button for me, it would really help my channel out a lot. I would really appreciate it. And for those of you who like real information and fact-based videos, this is the channel for you. So thank you very much for watching. And as I always say, until next time, be safe out there.